is said that Baba Yaga never breaks a promise. Legs, yes. Hearts occasionally. But a promise. Never. But who really is Baba Yaga? She is the rustle in the leaves that sounds too much like footsteps behind you. She is the shadow that flits between ancient trees, too fast to be an animal, too solid to be a trick of the light. Her legend begins not as a story, but as a warning. In the villages that border the great, dark forests of the Slavic world, mothers tell their children, "Do not wander far, or Baba Yaga will find you. She will snatch you up, carry you to her spinning hut on chicken legs, and grind your bones to flour with her mortar and pestle. For most, she is a nightmare-given form. A cannibal hag with a long, twisted nose that scrapes against the ceiling when she sleeps, and teeth made of sharpened iron she uses to tear the flesh from her victims. She is a figure of absolute terror, a boogeyman who lives just beyond the edge of civilization. She is not merely evil, she is a force of cosmic hunger, a predator who hunts not for food, but for the sheer joy of the chase and the satisfying crunch of bone. Yet there are other whispers, other stories told by those who have survived her domain. These stories speak of a different kind of power. They say that if a hero is brave enough and shows the proper respect, Baba Yaga can be a source of great power. A harsh and demanding helper, but a helper nonetheless. She is the keeper of the waters of life and death, the guardian of secrets that can turn a beggar into a king. She has been known to give worthy heroes magical gifts, like a horse that can outrun the sun, a self-guiding ball of yarn to lead them through impossible labyrinths, or the single piece of knowledge needed to defeat an immortal enemy. She is a monster who eats children, and to enter her woods is to gamble your soul. You might end up as just another skull on her glowing fence, a silent warning to others. Or you might emerge with the power to rewrite your own fate. The outcome depends entirely on you, on the courage you show, the respect you give, and the cleverness you possess. For Baba Yaga gives every person exactly what they deserve, and her judgment is as swift and absolute as a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. To find Baba Yaga is to first stumble upon her domain, and you do not find it by searching. You find it when you are most lost, when the woods have swallowed you whole, and the sun has become a forgotten memory. It is then, in a clearing where the very air hums with an ancient and unsettling power, that you see it. Her house. It is a thing of profound impossibility, a crude log cabin that defies every law of nature and architecture. The hut is perched precariously on two giant, scaly chicken legs that fidget and stomp, digging into the earth as if impatient. The house itself can walk, run through the forest at great speed, or sometimes just stand in one spot, spinning in a frantic, dizzying circle. It is a sentient gatekeeper that decides who is worthy of meeting its mistress. You cannot simply approach the door, as it is always turned away, facing the deep forest. To gain entry, you must know the secret words, the incantation to make it stop its maddening dance. Hut, oh hut, turn your back to the forest and your front to me. Only then does the house groan to a halt, its great legs bending as it lowers itself to the ground, offering you entry. The hut is far larger on the inside than it appears from the outside, but it is a grim and forbidding place, and it is there you see her, Baba Yaga. Her appearance is the stuff of nightmares, a physical form as monstrous and twisted as her reputation. She is often found stretched out over her stove, a grotesque figure reaching from one corner of the hut to the other. Her nose is so long and hooked that it sticks into the ceiling. She is ancient, her face a roadmap of cruelties and forgotten ages, her skin pulled tight over her skull. They call her Baba Yaga Kostyanya Noga, Baba Yaga the bony leg. One of her legs is not made of flesh and blood, but of bone, a dead, withered thing attached to her living body, a constant reminder that she exists on the very border between life and death. Her other most fearsome feature is her teeth. They are not the crumbling yellowed teeth of an old woman, but sharpened spikes of pure iron, made for tearing meat from bone and grinding the bones themselves into dust. She is the embodiment of the fearsome crone, the archetype of the destructive, devouring mother who threatens to consume all who cross her path. Surrounding her home was one of the most gruesome and unmistakable features of Baba Yaga's domain, a fence made entirely from human bones. This was no mere decoration or a simple barrier to keep out wild animals. It was a boundary line, a stark and brutal warning to all who dared to approach her isolated hut in the depths of the forest. The posts of the fence were bleached femurs and tibias, driven deep into the cold earth. Atop each post was a human skull, their empty eye sockets burning with a captive, supernatural fire that cast an eerie, dancing glow over the clearing at night. The gate was made of leg bones, and its lock was a human jawbone, complete with a set of razor-sharp teeth that snapped shut like a hungry mouth. Travelers who had survived the disorienting darkness of the woods and finally stumbled into this clearing immediately understood that they had crossed into a realm where the normal laws of life and death no longer applied. They were standing on the very edge of the otherworld. The bones were the remains of those who had come before them and failed her tests, or those who had been unlucky enough to fall prey to her insatiable hunger. Each glowing skull was a trophy, a grim testament to her power, and a personal threat to the newcomer. There was a single post on the fence that stood conspicuously empty. Baba Yaga would often point this out to a hero or heroine, telling them with a hungry grin that if they failed in their impossible tasks, she would eat them and use their skull to finally complete her gruesome collection. The fence hummed with a restless, captive energy, as if the souls of the dead still lingered there, bound to her, while as eternal, unwilling guardians of her domain. One of the most bizarre things about Baba Yaga was that to leave the forest, she would use her simple kitchen tools, transforming them into instruments of terrifying speed and power. When some unknowable impulse seized her, or when a hunger for something beyond her own dark woods drove her from her lair, she would prepare for a journey unlike any other. Her travels were not accomplished on foot or by riding a beast. Instead, she commanded her mortar, pestle, and broom to carry her through the sky. The process began with a great howling that seemed to emanate from the very timbers of her hut. The wind outside would shriek as if in protest, and the ancient trees of the forest would groan and bend away from her clearing, anticipating the violent departure. Rising from her stove, her bony leg making a dull, scraping sound on the packed earth floor, she would utter a sharp, guttural command. In response, her chosen vehicle would slide into view. It was a massive mortar, hewn from a single dark block of gnarled wood, or sometimes stone, and it was large enough for a full-grown person to stand inside with ease. The object hummed with a captive energy that made the air around it shimmer. A heavy, potent instrument ready to serve its master, with a surprising agility for a creature so ancient and grotesque. She would step inside the mortar, her iron teeth glinting in the gloom of the hut as she settled herself within its crude bowl. This mortar was her chariot, her vessel of pursuit and destruction. In her gnarled hands, she would then grasp her next instrument, which was the pestle. This was no simple tool for grinding herbs or grain. It was a heavy, club-like object, thick and menacing, a weapon in its own right. Gripping it firmly, she used it as both a rudder and an engine, a means of both steering and propulsion. She would drive the pestle into the base of the mortar with a great, resonant thump, and the vehicle would lurch violently into the air. With each powerful strike of the pestle, the mortar would gain speed, hurtling through the sky not with grace, but with raw, brutal force. The sound of her flight was a terrifying, grinding roar, like stone crushing stone, a noise that sent animals scattering for cover, and caused brave woodsmen to drop their axes and hide, praying she would not sense their presence. Russian stories even captured the rhythm of her flight in a rhyming phrase. Vi stup edit, pestum poganit, pomelum sled zamatit, in a mortar she rides, with the pestle she drives, with the broom her tracks she hides. As she tore through the sky, she wielded her final tool, a broom. Unlike the witches of other lands who were said to ride upon their brooms, Baba Yaga used hers for a far more cunning purpose. Her broom, often described as being made from the branches of a silver birch tree, was an instrument of absolute concealment. As the mortar rocketed forward, she would lean over the side and vigorously sweep the very air behind her. Her frantic sweeping motions erased every trace of her passage. The disturbed air would calm. The unnatural trail of her magic would vanish, and even the sound of her flight would be swallowed by the silence she left in her wake. This act made her untraceable, a ghost in the sky. She could travel to the ends of the earth and back, and no one could ever follow her path or know where she had been. She was a secret that moved through the world, leaving no mark behind. Her flight was a storm of her own making. The trees below her path would bend and creak as if in agony. The The wind she generated was a physical force, a gale that ripped leaves from branches and sent them swirling in her wake. Her passage was a violent disruption of the natural world, a clear display of a power that twisted the ordinary into the extraordinary. When her journey was complete, she would land with the same jarring force, the mortar crashing to the earth with a ground-shaking thud before she would step out, ready to conduct whatever fearsome business had called her from her home. Baba Yaga's dominion extended far beyond the gruesome bone fence that encircled her hut. Her power was woven into the very fabric of existence, a fact made terrifyingly clear by the daily procession of her most powerful and mysterious servants. These were 3 horsemen who were the living embodiments of time itself. They were her day, her sun, and her night, and their relentless passage was the cosmic machinery that governed her realm. The cycle began as the day's life drained from the sky. As the last vestiges of sunlight faded and the forest held its breath in the twilight gloom, the first rider would appear. From the deepest shadows of the woods, a horseman emerged, cloaked entirely in black. His garments were the color of coal dust and despair, his face a dark void, and he rode upon a magnificent steed as black as jet, its coat swallowing the dwindling light. This was her first servant, known as Black Midnight. He rode with a silent, inexorable purpose, his horse's hooves making no sound on the forest floor. He would gallop straight through the bone fence gates, passing the hut without a glance, and disappear into the darkness on the other side. The moment he vanished, a profound and total night would fall upon the world. It was not a gradual descent into darkness, but an instantaneous event, as if a great black curtain had been dropped over the sky. All at once, the world was plunged into a deep, oppressive blackness, and the only illumination came from the eerie, captive fire burning within the skulls on the fence, their glow suddenly fierce and sharp in the absolute dark. The reign of dark midnight had begun, and with it, Baba Yaga's sovereign time. For hours, this unnatural darkness would hold sway, a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight. But as the long night neared its end, a subtle shift would occur. On the eastern horizon, a point of light would appear, growing with impossible speed. This was the coming of the second horseman. He emerged from the woods like a phantom, a figure of pure, brilliant white. His robes were the color of fresh snow, and his face shone with a gentle, radiant light. He rode upon a powerful horse of pure, dazzling white, its mane and tail flowing like strands of moonlight. This was her second servant, Bright Day. He would gallop across the clearing, and as he passed the hut, the oppressive blackness would shatter like glass. The deep, heavy shadows would recede as if burned away, and the first pale, gray light of dawn would spill through the ancient trees, chasing away the terrors of the night. The birds would begin to sing, the forest would stir, and the world would awaken. The passage of Bright Day marked the return of the light, and the start of the mortal world's time once more. The day would unfold, the sun climbing higher into the sky. Then, very peak of the day, when the sun stood directly overhead, the third and final rider would make his appearance. He was a figure of fiery, blazing intensity, dressed all in crimson from head to toe. His face was flushed with a brilliant heat, like the heart of a forge fire, and his eyes burned with the power of the midday sun. He rode upon a magnificent horse the color of blood and fire, its hooves striking sparks from the very air as it moved. This was her third servant, the red sun. He would thunder across the clearing, a blur of motion and heat, and as he passed, the sun would reach its full, blazing glory. The light would become sharp and intense, the shadows stark and clear, and a wave of heat would wash over the forest. The red sun was the embodiment of the day's peak power, the height of its strength before the inevitable decline into twilight. This relentless, silent procession was the ultimate display of Baba Yaga's authority. Her 3 horsemen meant she had the power to command the dawn, the sun, and the nightfall. She was not subject to the passage of time, but its master. This control cemented her status as a primordial, chthonic deity, a being whose influence was as vast and inescapable as the turning of the world itself. So why did people seek out Baba Yaga? And what trials did they have to go through? Well, a person only journeyed to the witch's hut when they were trapped by a fate worse than the prospect of being her next meal. They sought her when a king demanded an impossible feat, when a loved one was stolen by an immortal evil, or when the only path forward was guarded by a power that only she could match. Such was the case for Prince Ivan, whose story shows exactly what one had to endure to win a prize from the guardian of the forest. Ivan's wife, the warrior Princess Mariamovna, had been abducted by Koshe the Deathless, an immortal sorcerer whose soul was hidden away, making him impossible to kill. Ivan had tried to fight him, but Koshe possessed a magical steed of incredible speed, and he had easily outrun and captured the prince. After escaping Koshe's dungeon, Ivan knew he could never rescue his wife unless he had a horse that was even faster. He was told that only one being in all the world possessed such animals, Baba Yaga. And so, with no other choice, Ivan journeyed for weeks, traveling beyond the thrice-ninth kingdom to the very edge of the world, until he found her spinning hut. After speaking the words to make the house turn, he stepped inside. Baba Yaga lay stretched across the stove, her bony leg dangling, her nose nearly touching the ceiling. "Fie, fie," she shrieked, sniffing the air. "I smell a Russian soul. Have you come of your own free will, or by compulsion, my good youth?" "Largely of my own free will," Ivan answered, his voice steady, "and twice as much by compulsion. I need a horse, grandmother, one that can outrun the steed of Kashi himself." The witch's iron teeth glinted. "A fine prize. You may have one, but only if you can earn it. You will be my herdsman. You must watch over my mares for 3 days. Keep the entire herd together. If you succeed, you may take any horse you like. But if you lose so much as a single one," she gestured toward the yard, Your head will be on my fence. Ivan agreed. The next morning, Baba Yaga opened the stable, and a herd of magnificent, wild-eyed mares thundered out. Ivan rode out behind them to the open field. The moment they were clear of the fence, the mares tossed their heads, raised their tails, and scattered in every direction like an explosion. They were faster than the wind, disappearing over the horizon in a matter of seconds. Ivan's heart sank. He searched all day, but found no trace of them. As the sun began to set, he sat on a stone, weeping in despair. Just then, a tiny bee flew to him. "Why do you weep, Prince Ivan?" it buzzed. Ivan recognized it as the queen bee from a hive he had encountered on his long journey to find Baba Yaga's hut. Days earlier, starving and exhausted, he had been about to take honey from the hive when the queen bee begged him to spare their stores, promising to repay his kindness one day. He had agreed and left them in peace. Now, that promise was being fulfilled. "Do not worry," the queen bee said. "I and my sisters will help you." At her command, a great swarm of bees descended upon the land. They flew out in all directions, finding the scattered mares and stinging them relentlessly until the horses, mad with pain, had no choice but to gallop back toward the stable. When Baba Yaga returned, she found Ivan leaning against the stable door, the entire herd safely inside. She was furious. "How did you do it?" she screamed, before turning on her mares and beating them with an iron bar for returning. On the second morning, she gave Ivan the same task. "If you scatter today," she shrieked at the mares, "you will not get away." But the moment they reached the field, the mares bolted again, this time transforming as they ran. Some became birds and flew into the sky, while others became fish and dove into the rivers. By midday, the field was empty. Once again, Ivan sat in despair. This time, a friendly wolf he had once spared approached him. Hearing his story, the wolf summoned its pack, along with birds of prey and great pikes from the river. The wolves chased down the mares on the ground. The birds attacked those in the sky, and the pikes forced the fish mares from the water. By sunset, the entire herd was once again in the stable. Baba Yaga's rage was terrible to behold. She beat her mares even harder, unable to comprehend how a mere mortal could best her magic. On the third and final day, Ivan discovered the source of the magical aid. Baba Yaga's youngest daughter had taken pity on him. "My mother means to kill you," she whispered, while the witch was away. "Listen to me. Today, when the mares scatter, do not chase them. Take this magical bridle. When my mother returns, she will be so enraged that she will fly at you herself. When she does, strike her 3 times on the head with this bridle. She will then be bound to her promise." Ivan did as she said. The mares scattered, and he waited. When Baba Yaga came home and saw the empty field, she let out a shriek of triumph and flew at him in her mortar, her iron teeth bared, ready to devour him. As she lunged, Ivan struck her once, twice, and a third time with the magical bridle. The witch collapsed, groaning. "You have won," she spat. "Take your horse." Her daughter appeared at his side again. "Do not take the finest horse," she advised. Go to the far corner of the stable. You will find a mangy, scabby colt lying on a dung heap. It looks worthless, but it is the fastest of them all. Slap it 3 times on the flank and take it." Ivan thanked her, went to the stable, and found the pathetic-looking colt. He slapped it on its flank, and it transformed into the most magnificent steed he had ever seen, its eyes blazing with intelligence. Knowing Baba Yaga's promises were only as good as the magic that bound them, Ivan leaped onto the horse and rode away like the wind, finally possessing the means to challenge Kashe and win back his wife. He had faced the witch's impossible trials and emerged not just with his life, but with the very key to his destiny. What about Vasilisa? Who was she? Her story is one of the most famous. Well, Vasilisa was a young girl, known throughout her village as Vasilisa the Beautiful. Her life, however, was marked by sorrow from a young age. When she was just 8 years old, her mother, a merchant's wife, lay on her deathbed. Before she passed, she summoned Vasilisa to her side and gave her a small, lovingly crafted doll. "Listen, my sweet child," she whispered, her voice frail. "This is my final gift and my blessing. Keep this doll with you always. Never show it to anyone. When you are in trouble, give it something to eat and drink, and ask for its advice. It will help you." With those words, her mother died. Vasilisa's father grieved for a time, but eventually remarried. His new wife was a widow with 2 daughters of her own, both cruel and petty. From the moment they moved in, the stepmother and her daughters were consumed with a bitter jealousy for Vasilisa's gentle nature and unmatched beauty. They began to torment her, giving her an endless list of backbreaking chores, hopping to wear her down with labor, and spoil her looks in the sun and wind. Vasilisa endured it all, but only because of her mother's last gift. Every night, when the others were asleep, she would retreat to her small closet, take out the doll, and give it a portion of her own meager supper. "Here, little doll, eat and drink," she would say, "and listen to my sorrows." The doll's eyes would begin to glow like embers, and it would come to life. After comforting Vasilisa, it would complete all of her chores for her while she slept. Vasilisa would wake to find the gardens weeded, the water barrels full, and the house perfectly clean. As the years passed, Vasilisa's beauty only grew, and soon all the eligible young men in their town sought her hand in marriage, ignoring her clumsy, plain stepsisters completely. This only fueled the stepmother's hatred. She refused all suitors, declaring, "I will not let the youngest marry before her elders," while secretly plotting a more permanent solution. To be rid of Vasilisa, she sold their house and moved the family to a remote cottage on the edge of a deep, dark forest. It was a place shunned by all, for deep within those woods lived Baba Yaga, the great and terrible witch who was known to eat people as one eats chicken. One autumn evening, the stepmother handed out the nighttime work. One stepsister was to make lace, the other to knit stockings, and Vasilisa to spin thread. The stepmother then extinguished every fire in the house, leaving only a single flickering candle where the girls worked. After a short time, one of the stepsisters took the snuffers and, as instructed by her mother, deliberately put out the last flame. "What shall we do?" she cried in mock panic. "There is no fire in the house, and our work is not done. One of us must go to Baba Yaga to ask for a light." "Not going," said the first stepsister. "My lacework is bright enough with my pins." "I'm not going," said the second. "My knitting needles give me enough light." Then, together, they turned on Vasilisa. "You must go," they screamed. "Go to Baba Yaga and fetch us fire." And they pushed her out of the cottage into the pitch-black night, terrified. Vasilisa went to her closet, placed food before her doll, and began to weep. "Little doll," she cried, "they are sending me to Baba Yaga for fire, and she will eat me." "Do not be afraid," the doll replied, its eyes glowing. "Go where you are sent. As long as I am with you, no harm will come to you from the witch." Vasilisa thanked her doll, put it in her pocket, and stepped out into the dark forest. The night was oppressive and terrifying. She could not see the path, and the woods were silent save for the howling of the wind. She walked for what felt like an eternity. As dawn approached, a rider on a white horse, himself dressed in white, galloped past her. The moment he passed, the world grew light. She walked all day, and as evening fell, a second rider, this one on a red horse and dressed in red, galloped by. The sun rose to its full height in the sky. She walked through another night, and just as she reached the clearing with Baba Yaga's hut, a third rider, all in black on a black horse, galloped past her and through the gates. At that moment, night fell completely. The only light now came from the skulls on the bone fence, their eye sockets burning with an eerie, internal fire. Suddenly, the forest was filled with a terrible noise. The trees groaned, and the leaves rustled as Baba Yaga came flying home in her mortar, driving it with the pestle and sweeping away her tracks with a broom. She landed and sniffed the air. "Fie, fie," she shrieked. "I smell a Russian soul. Who is there?" Vasilisa stepped forward, trembling, and bowed low. "It is I, grandmother. My stepsisters sent me to you to ask for fire." "Know them," Baba Yaga snarled. "Very well. You will stay and work for me first. If you serve me well, you shall have your fire. If not, I will eat you." The next morning, Baba Yaga gave Vasilisa her tasks. "You are to clean my yard and my hut, cook my supper, and then you must take a 1/4 bushel of wheat from my storehouse and pick it over, grain by grain. Make sure there is no black grain in it. All of this must be done by the time I return." With that, the witch flew off in her mortar. Vasilisa looked at the mountain of work and began to weep, but her doll comforted her. "Do not worry," it said. "Eat your dinner and rest. The morning is wiser than the evening." While Vasilisa slept, the doll did all the work, summoning unseen helpers to clean the hut and sort the grain. When Baba Yaga returned and found everything perfect, she was furious, but could say nothing. On the second day, the tasks were even harder. She had to sort a pile of poppy seeds from a pile of dirt, and a pile of sunflower seeds that had been mixed with soil. Again, the doll completed the tasks while Vasilisa slept. On the third day, Baba Yaga commanded Vasilisa to cook supper, but also to shell a pile of walnuts. Again, the work was done perfectly. Finally, her patience at an end, Baba Yaga called Vasilisa to her. "I have a question for you," the witch said. "How did you manage to do all the work I set for you?" Vasilisa, remembering her doll's advice, answered respectfully, "I was helped by my mother's blessing." At the word blessing, Baba Yaga flew into a rage. "Get out of my house, you blessed daughter," she screamed. "I want no blessed people here." She shoved Vasilisa out of the hut. "You have earned your fire," she grumbled. She took one of the skulls with furiously burning eyes from the fence, mounted it on a stick, and thrust it into Vasilisa's hands. "Here is your fire. Take it to your stepmother. This is what she sent you for." Vasilisa ran home through the forest, the skull's light illuminating the path before her. When she reached her cottage, her stepmother and stepsisters were overjoyed, thinking she had failed, and that the light was a sign of her death. But as she entered the house, the skull's burning eyes fixed upon the three cruel women. Its fiery gaze hunted them, boring into them no matter where they tried to run or hide. They were scorched by its magical fire, and by morning, all that was left of them was a pile of fine black ash. Vasilisa buried the skull in the garden so it could harm no one else. She then went to the city and found lodging with an old woman, waiting for her father to return. One day, to pass the time, she began to spin flax. The thread she spun was as fine and even as a hair. She wove it into a linen so beautiful that the old woman took it to the king's palace. The king was amazed and commanded that shirts be sewn from it, but no seamstress could work with such fine material. He sent for Vasilisa. The moment he laid eyes on her, he fell deeply in love. "I will not let you go," he said. "You shall be my wife." And so, Vasilisa married the king. Her father soon returned, and he and the old woman lived at the palace with her. And for the rest of her life, Vasilisa kept the little doll in her pocket. Is it possible that before she was a witch in a fairy tale, Baba Yaga was a goddess? Scholars and folklorists who have traced the roots of her stories have found compelling evidence that Baba Yaga is a goddess in exile, a powerful pre-Christian deity who was demoted, demonized, and driven into the margins of folklore when a new religion, Christianity, took hold. She was too powerful to be erased completely. So she was transformed from a divine figure into a monstrous hag. In the old pagan world of the ancient Slavs, their faith was tied directly to the earth. They worshipped the spirits of the forest, the rivers, and the sky. They had gods of thunder and gods of the underworld. And they had goddesses who governed the most fundamental aspects of existence: birth, death, and the turning of the seasons. Baba Yaga, in her earliest form, was likely one of these. She was a chthonic deity, a goddess of the earth, the wilderness, and the underworld, a primal force of both life and death. Her domain was the forest, which was seen as a sacred and terrifying place, the boundary between the world of the living and the world of the spirits. As the guardian of this boundary, she held immense power, Consider her attributes. She lives in a hut that is part animal, part structure, a living piece of the wild. Her fence is made of bones, a direct link to the land of the dead. She commands the day, the sun, and the night, giving her control over time itself. These are not the powers of a simple village witch. They are the powers of a cosmic deity who governs the natural order. She is often seen as the third aspect of a triple goddess figure, representing the crone, the face of death, winter, and the harsh wisdom that comes with age. In this role, she was the one who brought the end of the harvest and the coming of the long, cold winter. Her arrival marked a time of death and scarcity, but it was also a necessary part of the cycle that would eventually lead to rebirth in the spring. When Christianity spread across Eastern Europe, this old world of pagan gods and nature spirits was suppressed. The great male gods like Perun, the god of thunder, were often replaced by powerful male saints. But the powerful female deities of the old faith were not so easily replaced. Instead, they were often recast as demons, devils, and monstrous witches. They were pushed out of the central myths and into the dark woods of fairy tales. This is what happened to Baba Yaga. The goddess who held sway over life and death became a cannibal who ate children. The guardian of the spirit world became a fearsome monster to frighten people away from the old ways. But her divinity was never fully erased. It lingers in the details of her stories. She is not simply evil, she is a judge who rewards the worthy and punishes the lazy or disrespectful. She gives heroes the magical tools they need to succeed. She has knowledge of the waters of life and death. These are the actions of a deity, not a mere monster. The very fact that she lives in a hut that acts as a portal between worlds is a memory of her original role as a psychopomp, a guide of souls. So when we look at the Baba Yaga of the famous fairy tales, the terrifying witch with the iron teeth and the bony leg, we are looking at a goddess in exile. She is a divine ruler who has been cast out of her own pantheon, a powerful queen forced to live as a hermit in the woods. Her monstrous appearance and her cruel deeds are the result of centuries of demonization, a deliberate effort to transform a powerful female deity into a figure of fear. But her true, ancient power remains, a wild, untamable force that could never be fully contained by the new religion. She is the enduring spirit of the old world, a goddess who refuses to be forgotten. And so who is Baba Yaga? Simply the most fearsome and unpredictable power in all of Slavic folklore. She is the witch who eats children and the sage who provides the keys to kingdom. She is a monster with iron teeth who lives in a house that walks on chicken legs. And she is a cosmic force who commands the day, the sun, and the night as her personal servants. She is a being of absolute contradiction, a force of nature given a monstrous, human-like form. And we learn that her story has no real ending, because a force of nature cannot be killed. Heroes and heroines may survive her trials. They may escape her grasp with magical gifts that change their lives forever, but they do not vanquish her. She remains. She is the eternal guardian of the threshold, permanent trial that stands between the ordinary world and the world of magic. She is the untamed wilderness, the harshness of winter, and the cold, impartial judgment of death itself. She is the challenge that forges heroes or breaks them, the fearsome mother of the forest who offers wisdom only to those brave enough to earn it at a terrible price. The world changes, but Baba Yaga, in her spinning hut, surrounded by her fence of bones, waits forever in the deepest, darkest part of the woods. And so, we come to the end of our journey into the dark heart of the forest, to the domain of Baba Yaga. Thank you for listening in and joining us on this journey. We would love to know where you are listening from, or what you think about Baba Yaga, so please leave a comment below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the world of mythology and folklore. Have a good night, and we hope to meet again in the next video.